Everyone quiet, please. We are about to start, and here we go. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Overview Committee meeting on the 17th of July 2025. I'm your chair, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. There is no fire alarm drill anticipated this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, we know what to do, don't we, everyone? Please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. Thank you. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. I will call on Sarah James to do a roll call of committee members, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bethany Collins, please.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Collins.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dumper.
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Fernley.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Levine. Thank you. Councillor McKinder.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Riddell. Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. And I can confirm that we're quorate, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. We do have some apologies. You want to go through those?
Yes, so we have apologies from Councillor Aurora Bailey, Councillor Brian Bailey, Councillor Haggerty, Councillor Hartnell and Councillor Heath.
I also do have one from the portfolio holder, Nick Hookway, who unfortunately can't make it tonight. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, declarations of interest. Has anyone of our councillors in the committee or actually out? Oh, sorry, have I done not done? Oh, sorry.
Do what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Any members inside the committee got any declarations of interest on items? Councillor Dumper?
Are we required, particularly because of the motorhome item, are we required to declare that as town councillors?
I don't think you need to declare your town council membership if you sat on the Exmouth Town Council TAF. I think it would probably aid transparency to say that.
I did sit briefly on that TAF, but not recently.
Thank you, Councillor Dumper. Councillor Fernley?
I have a camper van.
Thank you. Noted. Any members outside the committee wanting to declarations? Councillor Young?
Yes, I sat on the Exmouth TAF for the last couple of occasions.
Thank you. And Councillor Steve Gazzard?
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare in effect NRI? I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor and I'm a member of the Exmouth Motorhome Parking TAF.
Thank you. Noted. We're going back. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of March 2025. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of March? Anyone? No comments? Next, they're agreed by the looks of things. Thank you. Item number 4 is public speaking. We do have 2 members of the public who registered to speak in connection with the agenda item number 7, the Exmouth Motorhome Parking and Overnight Stopovers. And I will call Mr. Robert Cathro to come to the stand for, I'm allowing Mr. Cathro 5 minutes to speak. Fire away.
Thank you. Good evening and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm representing the silent majority of residents. I've spoken to over 120 over the past 2 or 3 years about this matter. And I'm here to request that the committee rejects the proposal before them and request that East Devon District Council addresses the points raised in my 18-page note, and I make apologies for the length of the note. I'm not going to revisit the note. Hopefully it's clear and speaks for itself, but I do look forward to some answers to some of the issues raised in it. Instead, I'm going to draw the committee members' attention to some statements in the report before them, motorhome parking overnight stopovers. And of course, the first point is it's not really an overnight stopover. This is camping. It's not one night, it's 3 or more. I'm going to focus on fire safety, lack of enforcement, rule breaking, the resident-visitor balance, which is mentioned 8 times in the report, but there aren't any details of how it's achieved, the financial questions, parking order changes, the fact that residents weren't targeted well enough in the consultation, and surprisingly, the different results from the consultation that went to the TAF and Bliss Committee. 676 responses were reported to TAF. It's now 1,043, 507 of which were motorhome owners. It's now 904. And interestingly, 117 people objected when reported to the TAF, but now it's gone down to 106. So I'm wondering what's happened to the consultation results. The consultation mentions unanimous agreement, and that's not true at all. There were 117 or 106 people objecting at least. And it says it has a robust foundation for recommendations, which we don't agree with either. So from the latest figures, 904 of the 1,043 respondents own a motorhome, and 70 said they'd done so. That's 720 in all. So it's unsurprising that the consultation to 3/4 of the people have resulted in them being positively interested in camping. How many of those were local residents? We don't know, because the data collection exercise, and this is important, didn't address whether they were local residents. And where do they live? There was no question according to where they live. So again, we can't segregate the data according to whether it's a resident or an outsider or a non-resident responding. Moving on to the fees, they were £11 in 17, and everybody thought that might be a bit low then. Inflation since then is 1.38, which takes us to £15.18, which would mean if you add the increase that's been discussed around up to £14, it should be at least £20 now. And I note that 66 respondents said £25, 64 said 20, and 109 said 14. 66 and 64 is 130. So there's over 130 respondents saying £20 or more. Also, while we're on fees, longer vehicles should pay more. The 10-metre spaces are at least double the space of a 5.3-metre van. Moving on to income, by my reckoning, 1 year's income is about 60,000 based on the figures that are in the report. But the business case, I mean, there may be one, but there's no evidence of it. It mentions revenue obliquely, but it doesn't mention fees for facilities such as waste access. Operating costs, including signage, more attendance from staff. In the background notes, there's regular repeats of Morton Crescent to the Premier Inn having a restriction from Devon County Council. That's the February 24th note. That's not happened. And regularly, the background information mentions 30 spaces, 79 spaces, which occasionally are full. And I'm not sure how, in practice, marking of spaces works for overnight camping. In terms of attendance, how am I doing for time?
Just over a minute left.
Right.
So unfortunately the timer counted
Yes,
3 minutes.
It was
so
confusing me.
yeah.
In terms of attendance, the claims made about 364 days, 7 days a week attended. That's true, but it's not at night when many of the infringements happen. If you do the maths on the 286 PCN issued in 2.5 years, that's 108 per year or 2 per week. Now it makes sense why there's so many infringements that are not ticketed. I see at least 10 a day on a casual walk, a drive or cycle path. So if you do 10 a day times 5 days a week times 47 weeks a year, that's 2,350 infringements per year. 108 over 2,350 is just under 5%. So we're only ticketing about 5% of the rule infringements that we see. The Ringo idea is good. AMPR would be better. I noticed the report somewhere says that we can't do that for operational reasons. As an aside, when I was in Ouistreham near Caen recently, there is a place for camper vans. It's got a barrier in and out. It's got a waste disposal point, and you have to log in and pay and give all of your details. Finally, concluding, I'm nearly done. EDDC has failed to demonstrate in the past 6 years that it can successfully manage camping on its car parks, I'm afraid to say. The recommendations are based on part euphemism and don't contain meaningful or credible solutions to the problems that the Council admits to in its reports many times. And the finances are at best confused and not convincing. And finally, key safety issues are not addressed. It needs to go back to be reworked, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cathro.
Thanks.
You just got it just 5 seconds out, but thank you. Moving on to the second public speaker, Mr. Sav Spal has actually sent in a statement. I will hand over to Sarah James to read that one out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a statement from Sav Spal, who lives in Mare Lane in Exmouth, 400 metres from the seafront. I strongly oppose the policy of allowing overnight sleeping for motorhomes on the seafront and Mare Road car park, and have been making my views well known to my ward councillors and EDDC senior management for many years. Living within the vicinity affected by this dismal policy, I am on the seafront or passing the Mare Road car park regularly and at various hours during the day. The issues and antisocial behaviour that I witness continue year on year. This includes children playing on their bikes and scooters, thereby breaking all health and safety regulations, picnics and barbecues in the parking bay, gas burners contravening fire regulations, people outside their motorhomes in their pyjamas, camper van and a vehicle parked in the same bay. You can guess whether they are paying for both vehicles, but again, they're breaking fire regulations. We even had a coach that had a disco for everyone to listen to. What kind of advert is this for Exmouth and our beautiful seafront? On one of my cycle rides, I came across an individual who was cooking his barbecue alongside his motorhome and on the cycle path. When I challenged him, he didn't realise any wrongdoing. All the issues I have mentioned present a time bomb waiting for a serious incident to occur. How has a policy designed to get these motorhomes off our residential streets degenerated into actively encouraging them to have sleepovers and dominate our seafront? Where many councils have banned motorhomes and campervans from their seafront, EDDC continue to actively encourage them to come to Exmouth, pouring fuel onto a fire and allowing a situation to develop that is out of control and cannot be policed. There are serious questions I have been asking senior management for years that have never been answered. None of the questions or information I have requested sit under GDPR, and I see no reason to have to go to FOI for answers. Why can't I have answers? What are they afraid of? I have continually suggested and asked why out-of-town car parks are not being used to accommodate these vehicles. I have mentioned the benefits of making owners walk through the town, viewing our shops, restaurants, cafes, and providing some much-needed business to the town, and also making it easier for enforcement officers to patrol and regulate. Surely that is more important than having owners living in their motorhomes 24/7 at bargain rates whilst contributing nothing to our town. Perhaps EDDC are more interested in generating their revenue rather than what is best for our town and seafront. I and many others question whether the TAF Group are impartial, fair and democratic when making their recommendations, as everything centres around what is best for motorhomes, not what is best for Exmouth and our seafront. I have also pointed out that if their recommendations on turning the Mare Road into a campsite are approved, an equality impact assessment is necessary for many reasons, but also due to the impact on residents' house values. Using the results of a consultation with responses from hundreds of motorhome owners who live well outside the EX8 postcode is not a licence for EDDC to do whatever they want. I have often mentioned that there is a purpose-built campsite in Mare Lane, less than 1 mile from the Mare Road car park. However, EDDC are quite happy to compete with this campsite. Rather than supporting a business, they're happy to take business away from it. They should be promoting dozens of campsites within East Devon rather than pursuing a policy to increase their revenue, but nothing for Exmouth. What was supposed to be an impartial and democratic consultation turned into a promotion for enticing motorhomes onto our seafront. Statements like Queen's Drive Echelon, 79 spaces with direct sea views and convenient beach access. Mare Road, 217 spaces, slightly set back from the seafront, but benefits from a greater capacity in dedicated bays for larger vehicles. These statements are akin to an estate agent enticing viewers to visit a property. It's laughable. Questions included, what improvements and facilities would you like? All aimed at favouring motorhomes with any costs likely to be at taxpayers' expense. Furthermore, since when can you get 217 motorhomes into the Mare Road car park? The parking bays are for cars and some motorhomes are almost the size of a coach. Did anyone consider fire regulations? There are even regulations that are not being imposed or enforced. An example being the 3-night maximum stay in the Mayor Road car park, with one vehicle being allowed to stay for nearly 3 weeks. Why was that allowed? It makes a nonsense of a regulation that should be imposed and sends a wrong message. If it were a car breaking the regulation, it would quickly be punished, but this is another example of motorhomes being favoured. Exmouth is the only East Devon seaside resort that has had its seafront and car parks turned into campsites. The policy has failed dismally, yet we have decision makers burying their heads in the sand because it isn't on their doorstep and they're happy with everyone to live with and put up with the mayhem they have created. End of statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and I thank the public speakers for their contribution. That brings public speaking to a conclusion. We're now moving on to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Again, agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. There are none. So we will move on to agenda item 7, the Exmouth motorhome parking, pages 7 to 45 on the agenda. I would now like to welcome Exmouth Town Councillor Fred Cagill, who is attending this evening as an external witness to the committee in his capacity as Chair of the Town Council's Motorhome Task and Finish Forum. A briefing note provided by the Town Council is published with the agenda pack. Councillor Cagill will be invited to address the committee and has offered to answer any questions. And say, first of all, we'll have the report from Richard Easthope, Parking Service Manager, to present it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to put forward the recommendations that have come about through the Exmouth Motorhome TAF and have also been subject to public consultation as well. To be clear that this wasn't a review of the overnight stopover arrangements, this is very much looking at how we can improve the overnight stopover offer based on the issues that we've seen, that have witnessed and have been reported to us since it was introduced a number of years ago. So I don't know whether you wish for me to go through them all individually, but there are 7 recommendations. The first 2 relate to the installation of wastewater and toilet waste facilities in the Mayor Road car park. The third one is the installation of a freshwater tap for the use of camper vans and motorhomes. The reduction in the maximum permitted of consecutive overnight stays to 3 nights. This is in line with other authorities and prevents the risk of paid habitation within the car parks, which is something that we've have experienced within the last couple of years. An improvement in the signage as well as ground markings along the Queen's Drive echelon to designate days suitable for overnight parking. This will keep a gap between vehicles in line with fire regulations, which is something that we don't currently have in place. So the AMPR question that was raised earlier, the practicalities of installing AMPR are not possible due to their placement along the Queen's Drive echelon. They would be possible in Mayor Road, but I think it would be needed for both sites to be effective. So an alternative suggestion regarding the use of Ringo to physically limit and restrict the number of nights that vehicles can stay would be trialled as part of the recommendations. So that would stop any vehicles staying longer than the 3 nights, which is currently an issue that is quite difficult for our team to enforce across the 2 locations. And lastly, an increase in the overnight stopover fee to £15 is proposed, currently 11, and this is in recognition of the additional costs that will be incurred by installing and maintaining the facilities that are mentioned within the report. So yeah, hopefully that's all clear, and happy to answer any questions on those.
Thank you, Richard. Before we go to questions, etc., I'm going to ask Councillor Fred Cagill to speak on behalf of the Town Council's Motorhome TAF.
Thank you, Chair. Before I do speak, I'll just make it quite clear for transparency. I do own a camper van. I'm an elected member of Exmouth Town Council, and I chair the Task and Finish Forum, which is it's not just Exmouth Town Council, it's Devon County Council representatives and also East Devon District Council representatives. So it's a representative task and finish forum of 3 authorities. The Task and Finish Forum was set up I believe, nearly 9 to 10 years ago. And I think the person that first chaired it was the late Bill Nash back in the day. And it all came about because a lot of motorhomes were visiting Exmouth, parking on the Queen's Drive Echelon down the far end beyond Foxholes. And they were guilty, not everybody, but there was a proportion of people that were guilty of emptying their grey wastewater out onto the curbside, and in some cases their sewage, their black water. So this would then cause a problem because it would go down the drains, and those drains were connected to the wall of the seafront and ended up going straight out onto the sand, which is not acceptable to anybody by any means. So the Task and Finish Forum was set up, and it was invited to include county councillors and district councillors, because this is a problem that involved everybody. As I said, that Task and Finish Forum has been going a long time. And we've heard lots of speaking from public speakers at town council meetings, and obviously we've heard a gentleman come and speak tonight. Some of those things in the past that I've heard from Mr. Cathro, I've actually agreed with as a town councillor, because some of it is actually pertinent to the situation that befalls us. It's a very difficult one. We either want to encourage campervans and motorhomes to visit our town, be part of our economy, be part of our tourism, or we don't. And we can see from lots of interest around the country, motorhoming, campervanning is now a very busy, more prolific ownership of these vehicles, and people travel across the board around the United Kingdom and Great Britain in various different ways in either campervans or motorhomes. So it's a big thing. It puts a lot of money into the economy of the UK. It became bigger after the COVID pandemic, because more people decided that they wanted to stay at home and holiday in this country rather than going abroad, and wanted to get out in the fresh air and help their own health and well-being. That said, you know, we're at the place where we are, and we have met in the last couple of years and looked at how we could make a situation where people could actually be in a controlled environment with facilities. We don't want people to be putting wastewater onto the seafront. I'd rather see it go down a proper receptacle where you can actually put your grey water or even your chemical toilet waste in another proper receptacle, which would put it into the system. I'd rather see that as a town councillor, and I'm sure lots of other people would, not just councillors, but the wider public. So we discussed all sorts of things, and over a period of time, we've come up with some recommendations which were put forward before, and they've come back to the council after Richard, the car parks manager, on behalf of the district council, conducted a consultation, which in the report you've got all the replies and findings of that consultation. So Richard has put forward some recommendations, which the Task and Finish Forum, all the various members on the Task and Finish Forum, quite happy with, and we find ourselves back to this forum to discuss it and either move forward or not, as the case may be.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll stop there because I think I've probably covered everything.
Thank you very much for that coverage of the background and where we are at. I will move to members outside the committee. Councillor Steve Gazzard first, and then Peter Faithful. Sorry, Steve, are you switched on?
Can you hear me now? Oh,
Yes.
thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I say I fully endorse what Councillor Fred Cagle has said. He's absolutely right in what he's just addressed the committee with. There's been issues been raised about the consultation. Well, with any consultation, you're never going to please everybody. And I do commend the way that East Devon conducted their consultation, because it was just not local motorhome vehicles owners, but it was people from far afield, because they want to come to Exmouth, because we all know Exmouth is a beautiful place. And I think Exmouth, as has been said, is a tourist industry, and we have to cater for various organisations and people that want to come. As has been said, the TAF has been going between 9 and 10 years, and we've got to the stage of where recommendations have been made. I note the comments and the recommendations in the paper. I personally would welcome those. I think that they are good additions to what Exmouth TAF and Exmouth Town Council have provided. I just hope that tonight Overview will support the recommendations and make recommendations to Cabinet so that it can go to Cabinet ASAP, and it can be discussed and a decision can be made that we can get on and proceed with it as a matter of urgency, because it is desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Councillor Peter Faithful, please.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll start with a little history lesson for somebody else rather than the usual, but I'm sure our Chair would be familiar with what I've got to say, being brought up in much the very close proximity. This consultation, to me, has it been about people in Exmouth, or has anyone outside of Exmouth been consulted on this subject? Because I remember growing up, and through the summer, we'd come down to Exmouth from outside of Exmouth to enjoy the beach and park out on Queen's Drive. And when Queen's Drive was full, you'd park into Foxton Hole, and when Foxton Hole was full, you'd have to park in Mayor Road car park. I was down there very recently with Councillor Collins on a different event, and we had a little look around to see what was happening, and it really surprised me how full the whole area was with camper vans. Where is there for local families to come and park and enjoy the beach just in their car? Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm out of date with things, and maybe families don't do this anymore, but we would go down and park up. We get dropped off down at Orkham Point, and then Father would go off and park the car, and we'd spend an enjoyable day on the beach. And there's a whole stack of families. When we went down there the other day, the beach was practically empty. The parking was completely full, and there was practically nobody on the beach. And you think, I mean, maybe families don't sit on the beach and build sandcastles and all that sort of thing with their little children, but that's what we used to do, and it finds it rather strange for me. People saying we can't afford this and we can't afford that. Well, most people can afford a bucket and spade and build a castle and go swimming in the sea and all that sort of thing, but they can't if they can't get in the car parks. So can we please, if we're consulting, can we consult with all the people who are having some connection with this? Because all along the seafront, people come in from all across East Devon. It's not just people in Exmouth or people in camper vans who want to park up in Exmouth. it's all the villages, all the towns, all the rest of the district, and probably half of Exeter as well. So can we have a proper conversation on this subject? But it really was, I mean, I'm sure I'll support what is recommended with this, but I'm a bit not sure if we're doing enough. But there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Faithful. I think even growing up in Exmouth, local families stayed away from the beach at the summer holiday or busy times, or else we went over to Budley because we wanted to be into a quieter area. And that is from many, many years ago, and things have evolved over the years. So I think it's just a different trend at the moment, and the school holidays haven't actually started. So it's at the weekend you'll see families on the beach. At the moment, it's only at the weekends. During the school holidays, it will be crammed with people, families and things. So, but it is a very popular destination, and yeah, things have got really busy. Thank you. Moving into committee, or Councillor Jeff Young, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's no denying that camper vans are basically here to stay. They're popular worldwide, and you go down to Exmouth, as I do. Yeah, it's like a caravan train down there. Loads and loads of them. And I think we'll be kidding ourselves that we need that we can actually ban them from East Devon or stop them from coming. We have to cater for them and somehow do something that will help the local population, because they don't want vans parking out there outside their driveways and down their nice pretty roads. So there has to be a way of resolving this one way or the other. I think you've got to accept that we're going to see camper vans, and we have to do something about it. How? That's the question.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Moving into committee, I've got Councillor Roy Collins, Councillor Matt Hall and Councillor Makinda. Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Me and Peter, we went to Exmouth on the 28th of June. I like rock and roll, and there was a rock and roll festival near Queen's Drive. Most of the people, I think, were there because it was absolutely packed out. There was no room for people to dance or do anything like that. We had great difficulty parking. Queen's Drive Park was full right up. I waited and waited, and in the end, I drove up over the curb and parked on the grass, hoping I wouldn't get a ticket. And lots of other people had done the same. That was all full. I mean, because I can't walk too far. And we walked along, and we had a good afternoon at the Rock and Roll. When that was over, we walked along to see the new seawall, because I hadn't seen it in great detail. And as Peter says, it was amazing. There was very few people on the beach. There were quite a lot of young ladies in bikinis walking about the roads and getting ice creams, and the cafes were doing very well. And then we went to Mere Road car park, and that, well, it's just ridiculous, the number of motorhomes in there. They'd taken all the coach spaces, so if a coach had turned up, there's no way a coach could park there. And some of these motorhomes nowadays, they've got a hitch on the back, so they pull a car on the back of their motorhome. So they're taking up an awful lot of room. And most of the motorhomes were purpose-built vehicles. And they're a lot longer than, like, you think of a transit van or anything like that. And some of them were pretty well, I think they were double-decker by the look of them. It was full, and there were dogs and children and everything. And I thought, well, this don't seem right at all. Now, I was listening to Radio 2, and they were going to be discussing motorhomes this afternoon. And what they said on there was that motorhomes have taken the place of caravans. People stop buying caravans because they're so expensive now, and problems with driving and putting them on the back of vehicles now. A motorhome is a much better proposition. So this problem will increase tremendously, and I think you should nip it in the bud and stop motorhomes altogether. And we went round other car parks, and there were motorhomes in those. The motorhomes were parked on the seafront, on where we have to pay the county council to park, and they stick out in the road, so when two vehicles are going by, they haven't got enough room to pass. You've got to pull in and wait. No, I think you've got a real problem building up in Exmouth, and as it's nowhere else in East Devon, people may well stop in Exmouth and think, oh, we'll go to Sidmouth, we'll stop there the night. They ain't going to take any notice of any sign that's saying they can't park there, because I'm told that there's no council officials at night time to check on parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Quick one for Richard. Enforcement. What do we have in the way of enforcement, please?
So we currently have dedicated car park enforcement every day of the year apart from Christmas Day. So we'll have someone in Exmouth, or at least someone, one or two people in Exmouth every day. I suppose the biggest gap in enforcement is that evening section between sort of 6 p.m. once the charging hours stop, and 8 or sort of maybe 7 a.m. in the morning, because our guys are quite early risers as well, so they will be down there early if anyone hasn't paid overnight. We've recently we've got the antisocial behaviour officers who look at different things. So some of the stuff like that's been reported around barbecues and paraphernalia, they can be utilised for that. So there is a presence, but in terms of car parking enforcement, there is that gap going sort of through the night for the evening sessions, let's say.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Matt Hall.
We are on questions, aren't we? Good. Richard, I've got a number of questions, and I'll do them one at a time because it's probably easier that way. With regards to the echelon parking, which obviously is not realistically allowing the size of motorhomes that typically have on-board facilities, now that East Devon has decided to close the Mayor Road toilets, how suitable do you believe the echelon section is still for overnight parking, bearing in mind the recent issues we've had with dumping of grey water, etc., in the area? Do you feel that that's still the right area for it? And I don't know if you know the answer to this point, following on very similar. Is it true that the new Foxholes toilets close at 10 o'clock at night?
My understanding is that the new Foxholes toilets do close at 10 p.m. at night. I don't think there's any change to the old ones. I think my understanding is they've got a self-locking mechanism, so they lock themselves at 10 p.m. I don't know any more on that. As for the echelon and the parking, there's a length limit of 5.2 metres there. So we don't, I guess, require that motorhomes and camper vans are self-contained. I think all we require is that the people that are driving them act responsibly and dispose of their waste and use the toilet facilities that are available as and when they need them. So there's been no change there. I think the only real difference would be, as I said, that these would be improvements. So having places that people can responsibly dispose of their waste as a sort of a conscious choice is sort of the reasons behind the recommendation. So yeah, there's no previous authority I was at, we did require that vehicles had that they did have onboard facilities themselves, but that was almost impossible to enforce, without being able to see or go inside the vehicles. You merely guessing whether they did or not. So that isn't a sort of a practical thing to try and enforce. But I think the nature of these recommendations will lead towards more self-contained vehicles with the differences in pricing and also with the facilities that are available, they will be an attraction to those vehicles that do have the chemical waste toilet and the grey water on board. So.
Thank you. Second question. I note through the consultation process there was a number of responders who mentioned about the idea of having some form of CCTV within the car park to help with monitoring of, I presume, antisocial behaviour, etc. Is that something that we've looked at? Is that a possibility in that area? Would that form part of any proposals going forwards?
It's not something that's included in this phase of the recommendations, but it's something that can be considered. We've recently, or not too recently, we don't run or operate any CCTV within our car parks. That would be a new thing for us to do or to take on. But I don't necessarily think that the antisocial behaviour is the problem. We're able to lock the gate at Mayor Road. I think it's more to do with, it's all right seeing something or having a reported issue that we then know about through the use of CCTV, but I think it's much more useful having that sort of presence on the ground with people sort of engaging and talking to those people that are staying to try and prevent that in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, one of the things with anything like a policy such as this, it is only as good as the enforcement that we can do. I am slightly concerned about your comments about that sort of gap between 6 p.m. and sort of midnight, we call it, that sort of area. I mean, obviously, there was the comment about using the Ringo app, so then that sort of, I think your term was, that stops them from being there for more than 3 nights. The thing is, if you mix that, and then you mix the fact that typically district councils, in fact, most councils, tend not to do much in the way of parking enforcement after 6 p.m. So in theory, what's to stop a camper van owner going and paying for 2 days, disappearing, off in the day and then returning back at 6:30 at night and being able to park for free? Because in essence, Ringo doesn't stop them from crossing into the car park, and they'll probably know that, there's no enforcement about. So what is there to help sort of prevent that in any way?
I think from experience, most people are quite conscientious and do wish to pay. I think some people will take advantage of restrictions, such as if they can, they will buy multiple tickets throughout the day to try and avoid some of find loopholes in the current restrictions that there are. I think the physical restrictions, and the stopping of any return after those sessions. But people, if the ticket is a 24-hour ticket, so at points within that day, the early morning enforcement catches a lot of people that don't choose to pay through the night. So unless they're going to be arriving sort of after 6 and leaving sort of before 6 in the morning, which is when a lot of our enforcement starts, then they're going to receive a ticket. So they'll have an uncomfortable night and they'll have to get up early if they want to avoid our enforcement officers.
And you'll probably be glad to know the last question. The Ringo app, other apps are available, other service providers are available. I presume we have to pay for that service. Is that a fixed payment? Is that a percentage payment? And I understand that other councils in the southwest have recently found that the equivalent of Ringo have suddenly put up their charges, so that then councils are left wondering quite how to round the circle off. So would us using Ringo allow us some certainty in terms of the pricing structure that they would charge us for an X amount of period, or is it like a rolling year contract, or what?
So we have recently extended our contract with Ringo for a further 24 months. That now includes, which is commonplace across the industry, a 10p convenience fee, which will be picked up by the motorists. So at the point of paying, the motorists will pay a 10p fee on top of our parking charge in order to use Ringo. So the answer to your question, the customer picks up that percentage of it. There is another fee, which is a percentage, which is a banking fee, which we pay regardless on all of our Ringo income. there isn't really a cheap way of taking money or receiving money, but if, card payments have a gateway and a transaction charge applicable, and by collecting the cash, we have to physically collect that and transport it and bank it, and also pay a banking fee for that service as well. So there's no free way of us receiving money, and they're all basically equivalent. There isn't a preferred option as far as we're concerned. But so we're not picking up that convenience fee, which some have, and that is variable as well around the country. You'll see in other places that some people will be charging a 20p convenience fee, and the rationale for that is the introduction of the National Parking Platform, which may be coming to East Devon at some point, which is a Department of Transport initiative, meaning that people can use whichever app they prefer. So you mentioned about there are other apps available. There certainly are. So if you're coming from up north, it may be that you're used to using a different provider, and then this model would allow you to use any parking app, no matter where you parked in the country, just so you can choose your favourite one rather than having to sort of conform with whatever one the council's put in place wherever you happen to be. So this should make it easier for motorists and also for councils as well. But the model will then be that the app providers will then get their share of the income directly from the motorists for sort of their charge for using their particular app. So rather than councils paying it, it will be the motorists that pick up that fee.
Thank you very much for those questions and answers. Moving on to Councillor Mackinder, then Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Paula Fernley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, if I could ask you a few more questions about the Ringo app. Does it allow us to limit the number of camper vans? So there's a limited number of spaces. Does it know that, or I've already had 6 tickets for tonight, so I can issue another one? Or is that not possible through Ringo?
I believe so. Yeah, no, I believe that is available. I don't know if we would look to do that because currently the Ringo code is shared.
Can we have these? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we would look to do that because the Ringo code is currently shared between the 2 locations. So you can, if you park, we don't necessarily know where they parked. They're using the motorhome code, which is for Queen's Drive, Echelon, or for Mayor Road. So.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my second one, was this no return within 72 hours. You parked in one of them and you leave, you can't go to either of them for 72 hours because it's the same code.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And that would be the one benefit of that, is that you wouldn't be able to go from one car park to the next. So it's a shared code. So once you've stayed for your maximum number of nights, you'll then have to leave, or you won't be able to buy a ticket for your overnight portion of your stay.
Okay, and a final one on Ringo. Obviously, it talks to DVLA to get details of the owner of the vehicle. Does it have information on the size of the vehicle? Because there were complaints about extra large vehicles, and if we have regulations like you cannot be more than 5.3 metres or whatever it might be long, can it say, oh, sorry, this registration mark goes with a vehicle that's twice the length we allow, so I won't issue a ticket?
It does restrict the type of vehicle, but not to that sort of level of granularity. Sorry, I can't say that word. Which is it's not to the length of the vehicle, so it will restrict cars parking in coach bays, for example. So say you're not entitled to park here, and vice versa. But no, we can't do it based on the size of the vehicle. But we do stipulate that vehicles have to fit wholly within the marked bay. That is clear on signage within our car park.
Thank you. And that presumably would stop people towing a car behind them, because with the car or their long boat, they're not going to fit in the bay, so they wouldn't be allowed. Yeah,
no, the only thing I will say about is the coach bays that are currently at Mayor Road, they're frequently used by larger vehicles there, which is something that we can look to sort of restrict in the future. We haven't done so far because we'd much rather they park there and they were out of the way in the absence of them being used by any large vehicles, and it keeps them away from each other and also from so at the moment, there's no restriction there, but that could be included in the signage should it be required.
So I have one more question, if I may, to the camper van owners, because not being a camper van owner, I don't know. I assume that you've got the right to drive anywhere on the roads, pretty much, that your vehicle will fit. So there's no way that you can be told, oh, sorry, camper vans are not allowed in this town. That's just not the way it works. Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Duncan. Councillor Dan Wilson.
Hello, Richard. I've got just two questions. The first one, picking up on the members of the public's comments, about the checks in place of somebody attending site. How often is that? How frequent is that? How often do they stay for? Is that every day? Does that include weekends and bank holidays, etc.?
Yeah, so that's every day of the week. They're on a 7-day working pattern, and we don't dictate to them where and how they go about their shifts. They'll be allocated an area, so they'll be allocated Exmouth, for example. That would be one of the rounds. So you'd have 1 or 2 people there working there throughout the day at various times, visiting as and where they see fit. So that they have certain jobs that involve checking all of the machines, making sure that they're operational, making sure that people can pay. But in terms of enforcement, it'd be based on where they see the most vehicles and where they wish to enforce on that day. And obviously, we can guide that as well. So if I want some additional motorhome enforcement done at a certain time of the day, then I can guide that too.
And my second question, again from the public's statements, they both referenced other councils and what they do, and the suggestion was that we are allowing this and other councils aren't. I just wondered, do you guys have a lot of communication with other councils? Do you look at other councils in a similar, with a seaside town, what they're doing, and if so, are they doing the same as we're doing, or do they not allow it?
So Devon County's preference is that motorhomes use council car parks, but no, many of the other local authorities nearby do not allow motorhomes. I think there's a big gap. I think the whole of Dorset is a no motorhome zone for on street and car park parking. Cornwall is a bit more accommodating. As I understand, there are various places where motorhomes are permitted to park. The South Hams, so they're similarly to here, there are some places where motorhomes are allowed to park, and they're sort of contained within those areas. Teambridge, our neighbours, do not allow overnight motorhome parking within their car park. So Exmouth is one of the few places along the stretch of coastline that does currently allow it, and it was something that was opened up to the other towns around East Devon and still is, but that would be sort of on a member-led approach, and sort of subject to their own sort of local consultation as to the appropriateness of that. But it is an offer that can be extended as well.
Sorry, thank you for that. So when you see that some councils allow it, some councils don't, what is the deciding factor for you when you decide whether we should allow it or not? Is it the promotion of tourism, or because, as Councillor Young said, it's very difficult to stop?
So it's something that's supported through the parking strategy, and it's not by no means my decision. This is a sort of a shared decision and the policy of the council as it currently stands, and it was before my time. The motorhome trial took place before I was in post, so I'm merely sort of facilitating the views and wants of members and also the public through the consultation process. So my understanding is that the use of motorhomes is quite synonymous with the use of the beach and sort of windsurfing and kite surfing. So it's something that, as I understand, Exmouth as a town supports. So something that we then facilitate as the district council to provide that facility. But that is my sort of view on it. I don't have an opinion either way. I'm not a motorhome owner, so I'm merely going with the stating the facts and putting the options to members to consider.
Thank you both. Moving on to Councillor Fernley and then Councillor Beckman.
Thank you, Richard. I think I've just got one question left that hasn't been answered. Duncan McKinder grilled you mercilessly on Ringo. If the grey water, where you empty your sewage, if you like, there's only one point, isn't there? It's not, there's just one point there.
Sorry, is that a question?
Yes, there's just one point in one car park. It's not in both.
So it'd be 1 point for the 2 separate parts of that. So you've got the drainage area, which is for the grey water, which is your dishwater and shower water, as I understand. So that's released from the bottom of the vehicle, and then you've got the chemical toilet waste cartridges, which are disposed of at a separate place. So they don't necessarily have to be together, but it makes sense for them to be within the vicinity of each other.
Yes, but it's not in both areas. It's going to be one.
No, sorry, yes, it would only be in Mayor Road, and that's purely for sort of space and convenience to have a drive over point. And it makes a lot more sense to have that incorporated within the main car park area where you're able to drive around, where Echelon is sort of a reversing type situation with no sort of opportunity for driving through.
I mean, I think it's extremely useful to have that. I'm just wondering if people have paid to park on Queen's Drive and then they need to go to Mayor Road to empty, are they going to get charged again to go in that car park? Or is there going to be a bay that they can just pull into to empty?
No, so there's no charge. They'll be able to, so that if they park along there, the idea will be that the sign. Oh. Okay. Press all the buttons. So the idea will be that there will be signage along the Echelon directing people to Mayor Road for the purpose of wastewater disposal. So they won't be charged. You don't get charged just for driving into the car park. You have to make a conscious and assertive effort to pay.
Thank you very much. I think we're being very generous.
Thank you. Moving on to Bethany Collins.
Thank you, Richard. It's another question on Ringo. So obviously the Ringo app restricts you to the no return within 72 hours. Is that based on the number plate of the vehicle? So I couldn't just go along and say, oh, I'll do my 3 days, and then someone else that I'm with could say, oh, no, I'll put it on my phone, and then you get an extra 6 days. I just wanted to check if that's right.
Yeah, that's right. It'd be vehicle specific, and we can set the no return time as well. So that can be set at 3 days, for example. So if it's a 3-day stay, there can be no return within 72 hours, and we can stipulate that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Levine, and then I think Councillor Dumper.
Oh, I thought I'd be the last one. I don't want to be left out, but what I wanted to do is my councillor, my Goodman impression. Will the £15 fee cover the cost?
Well, it depends what costs we're referring to. We're currently at £11, so £15 would represent an increase there. So the cost we will incur would be for the cost of the water, which I believe I've been reliably informed that a normal camper van may have a 100-litre tank, which that would cost us at current rates up to 30p, should they decide to fill up their whole tank within their vehicle. So essentially, yes, I mean, the other cost involved will be around the maintenance, but that would be sporadic for we're looking at providing a hole in the ground for people to pour their waste into, and another one for them for their other water and waste. So apart from the maintenance of those, and over time it would cover the installation of those facilities as well.
Thank you, Councillor Levine. Councillor Dumper.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Yeah, just to ask about the payment, and I've asked this question before actually, which is our decision some while ago in car parks was that there would be a cash facility, and I understand what's being said about the way this is operated and the need to use Ringo or equivalent, but I do feel that we're going against our policy in terms of cash. Any comment on that, Richard?
No, I mean, as you say, there is a commitment within the parking strategy to offer cash as far and as long as practically possible. It probably says it more eloquently than that, but yeah, you get the idea. So I guess it is a variation to that, but I mean, this is quite a specific and bespoke circumstances, and we're trying to address and resolve a particular problem that can't be done in any other way. And I think, most people won't have 20, if it's £15 worth of cash, we will find that most, I can give you the answers to that probably, but most people won't be paying cash for the overnight stopover offer. They will either be paying on card or by Ringo anyway, because it's quite a lot of pound coins to have. I certainly don't have that many pound coins.
Of course, they won't be able to pay by card by this method either.
No, that's right. They won't be able to pay by card at the machine because the machine has no way of regulating or knowing how long someone stayed for, and it won't stop you buying repeating tickets, and you could stay for as long as you want, essentially. And we would need new technology to be able to monitor that as well. So currently we can observe a vehicle for a maximum of 24 hours within a car park. So you're relying on sort of other interventions for us to be able to know how long a car has stayed there. You know, to know that it's stayed there a week or two, and if it is breaking those regulations, there's a lot more work that needs to go into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I've got one question. I don't want to see residents and the local taxpayer paying for water consumption for camper van owners, because they could be topping up quite a lot of, because we're going to be providing facilities. Yes, they're going to be paying a bit for it. Is there a way of charging for the water actually at the taps so that we can actually charge them for it? Thank you.
I imagine that there absolutely is. I just, from experience with other such things, and such as anything that's chargeable to a low amount, it normally, if you have to get the maintenance engineers out or anyone else to fix these, it normally eats into quite a lot of the income that you make. So I think to incorporate that into the fee and, you know, allow sort of trust people to take as much water as they need. As part of that, I think is one option. I mean, we can look at charging. That is another one, but not something that I've considered so far.
Thank you for your answer on that one. Councillor? Not Councillor, Simon? Oh, geez, really.
I just wanted to add to Richard when he covered the costs. There is an element of capital going in as well. I think it comes to about 55,000, something like that. So there is a cost to the capital, which with interest is about 2,000 a year. Just to add that to Richard's point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matt Hall, and then over to Fred Cahill.
That just reminded me, sorry, the cost associated with this seemed to be quite reasonable, and I was surprised at the cost. Are we sure that these costs are accurate?
Is there a particular part that you're concerned about? I mean, the costs did come from an engineer who's no longer with the council, so we won't be able to hold him accountable for those. But they were picked up last year, so they're not too old. So there may be some slight variance or increases there, but nothing significant.
Thank you. Over to you, Fred.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to bring some points to the committee, if I may. As a camper van owner, I travel around the country. I'm a member of the Camper Van and Motorhome Club. I pay to use a site. I pay to use facilities. Why wouldn't I? As part of being the member, you get it at a reduced price for being a member. One thing I'd like to sort of point out, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, but motorhoming, camper vanning, recreational vehicles, whatever you want to call it, it's been around for a long, long time in a lot of countries across the world. And I just wanted to give you, because lots of people talk about airs in France, and I have here a book of all the airs in the north of France and all the airs in the south of France. It's a very big book with lots of sites. And just to give you a demonstration, if you might afford me the liberty of holding this map up.
But am I right in saying these are actual campsites?
Campsites,
No.
airs, facilities.
They're facilities in public car parks out there.
Wherever they are situated in France, and in some places they are in car parks. But they're not car parks, they're airs. So, you know, it's a way that France have developed this as a tourism facility. And as you can see, there's lots of different airs across North and South France. It's just to give you an idea that, you know, other countries engage with this. And, you know, many people said, well, why don't we have the same sort of facility as they have in France? It's about providing a facility for motorhome and camper van owners who use their vehicle to go and enjoy their holiday, enjoy the wildlife, enjoy the countryside, and enjoy the hospitality of various towns, villages across the UK and Great Britain. So in that sense, you know, I think there's an opportunity here to engage with people, and it will help the local economy of East Devon. This isn't just about Exmouth, it is about the wider East Devon, and I think we should look at it in the light that we want to be encouraging campervan and motor owners. Just this morning, I was talking to two taxi drivers, and I asked them the question. I said, do you get any business from the motorhome owners and campervan owners on the seafront and Mayor Road car park? And they said, yes, we do. We quite often get called to go and pick them up, to take them into town to a restaurant or a pub or whatever it may be. So there is input into the local economy. So I think, you know, that's something to be considered.
I totally agree that we're a tourist area and we need to not shut the door. It's a matter of how we do it.
Absolutely.
And I also want to encourage, well, I'd like to see campervan owners be able to use the private facilities we also have and encourage, again, businesses on our doorstep to be actually viable. And I know we've lost one campsite in Exmouth over the last year. We've still got Pratt's Hayes, but I'm saying we don't want to be seen to be competing with them. That is wrong. We want to actually encourage people to use that. If there isn't, and if it's a shorter thing, then they can use a facility. But we will go to the debate now.
Can I just answer one last thing? There are a lot of certified locations which are smaller campsites. They're still part of the caravan and moto setup. They allow 5 units on a site. Most of them are local farmers. So once again, everybody's contributing to that economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into debate, Councillor Fernley and then Duncan, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I broadly welcome the report. I think we do need to be moving forward with Exmouth. Camper vans are, as I said, I have a camper van. I have a 5.5 metre VW camper van that you wouldn't want to spend a week in. 2 nights is enough for me before I need a decent bed. So I think there are a lot of people in that particular situation. So I think we're being very generous with offering the 3 nights. I've recently come back from a trip to Scotland, and they have their own version of Airs in some places. There was a car park opposite the hotel we were in, which had facilities like we're going to offer, and there were big bays and all sorts of vehicles in there, which is great because they could then access the facilities in that local area. The Scottish Forestry Commission allow you to park for 1 night in lovely sites opposite locks and that sort of thing. They just allow 1 night. Lots of places just allow you from 6 p.m. at night to 10 a.m. the following day. So you're utilising that period when the car parks probably aren't used that much in some areas. So much to say. I think the price possibly is a bit cheap that we've got in this report. If we could somehow manage to finance for an enforcement officer to be able to work these hours, I think it will provide a lot of reassurance to residents. People behave badly. Doesn't matter whether they're paying or not, some will always behave badly. So it's nice to be able to try and do something about that. What else to say? Where we're talking about camper vans that have 100-litre tanks, they're generally not the small VW Ford Transit types, and they're not going to be getting rid of 100 litres of water or using 100 litres of water. We can carry about 20 litres, and that will keep us going for quite a few days. And lots of the VWs have portaloos in them, so people are worrying that the toilets aren't near enough. I think most people, you know, they want to look after the place, and they've either got their own facilities or they'll go somewhere else. So I don't think that's something we should necessarily worry about. And that's all I can think of for now, but I'm sure I'll have more to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fernley. Over to Councillor Mackinder and then Councillor Hall, Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I broadly support this. I think, like Councillor Fernley, I'm slight query about the rate we're charging, whether we could consider a slightly higher rate to recover more of our costs. I doubt we could ever set a rate that would be enough to have 24-hour car parking, enforcement. I don't know whether you've even done those calculations, but I bet it would be more than just adding a couple of quid to the price. I assume that there's no restriction on somebody parking a camper van during the day in our car park. So when Richard said, in answer to one of Councillor Wilson's questions, that Dorset was a no-go area for camper vans, I'm assuming they are allowed to drive through Dorset and probably even park in Dorset car parks. They just can't stay overnight. So I think what we have to think here is that we cannot stop camper vans coming in. They're a perfectly valid sort of vehicle to own and drive on the roads of this country. They are allowed to park in our car parks during the day, and if we provide some sort of facilities for them overnight, then we've got more legs to stand on when we try and enforce people doing the wrong thing. So we can now say, look, you don't have an overnight ticket because you didn't get it through Ringo. We know from your reg that you've not paid for this. Please exit. And also, if people turn up and try and get their Ringo ticket in the system, if it is the sort of thing that says, well, I know there are 50 bays here, they're all paid for tonight, and there's a bunch of other camper vans, they've obviously not paid. Presumably they'll be calling East Devon to say, I can see all these vans here, why can't I get in? Or I paid to park, but there's no space because you've let me park, you've let me pay, and now I can't stop my vehicle. So I think this seems like a very sensible way of trying to bring some sort of sanity and control to the situation, which I'm sure won't address all of the residents' concerns, but some of their concerns about the releases from the vehicles in terms of water being disposed of in places it shouldn't be. At least we now have a way that you can do it within the rules, so you've absolutely no excuse for just ditching water out of your van or the sewage out of your van. And so then responsible van owners have got perfect right to be there for the night, enjoy the facilities, and actually spend something in some of the facilities in Exmouth. So thank you. I think I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Duncan. Just before I go to Councillor Matt Hall, I picked up that the £11 charge actually covers for their car parking. So in actual fact, we're just charging them £3 to park overnight. That to me is totally wrong. And that is where we need to review the charges. I really do think £20 minimum. And it may be even look at seasonal charging for high season and low season, because it will still be a cheap option at £20 in the winter and maybe 25 in the summer. So we're not actually visibly in competition with our businesses, because the businesses, that is their business. Yes, they've got extra facilities on site, but I just think 20 certainly is the minimum we should be looking at. But I will pass over to Councillor Hall and then back to Councillor Fernley.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is one of those very many council decisions where you will never please everybody. I think what we've got is it's a little bit of a sad state, isn't it, that a tourist town that is growing and becoming more popular, that unfortunately the only practical solution is to utilise a car park in a town which might get over 1,000 more homes, which is 2,000 more cars which have got to park somewhere. It's very unfortunate, that. But as many of us have said around the table tonight, we're in a position where we cannot stop camper vans coming in. So we are therefore in a choice of two, I think. we either provide facilities in certain areas, or they end up parked in residential roads potentially, or elsewhere. I don't think that this is an ideal solution, but I do think that £15 isn't enough. I'm not a mathematical genius, but I would certainly like to see it at least £20, and that uplift purely spent on providing some form of enforcement, whether that's providing an additional enforcement officer, supplements being offered to existing staff to work different hours, or something like that. I think that is a practical solution that I think this council needs to address to provide reassurance. I, like many, query whether 3 nights is a night too many. Whether we agree tonight on 2 nights or 3 nights, what I would like to see is a recommendation that a year after this is first set up, I presume it would go to scrutiny committee, that it is actually looked at to see how the situation is working, whether 3 nights is causing issues, whether 2 nights would be better, whether actually the majority of people are staying 2 nights. I think that's the way to go forward, to find some form of reassurance for all, while providing a facility in a town that is heavily reliant on tourism. I think it's an important thing. I don't think we're in a position really where the answer to this is no. It's a way of how do we, and I think with a few tweaks and looking at you know, like a yearly sort of check on the situation, I think that's personally the way that this should go forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Fernley?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Hall there. I mean, I'd be very up for it just being for 2 nights, because most people are going to be weekenders during most of the year, apart from the summer. And 3 nights just, and for a small camper van, you're probably not going to want to stay for 3 nights on a busy road, for example. Mayor Car Park may be okay, but you've got to think of the market that wants to stay and the people that actually want to stay on a road that's actually really quite noisy. People will come for different reasons, and lots will come maybe for a night. They've done some surfing in the day or whatever they've done on the water. I mean, maybe you want to go and see a show in the evening. So they're contributing to the economy. They can cope with a dodgy night once, but I don't think the 3 nights would be used that often. And thankfully we have got a safeguard for that, haven't we? I don't necessarily worry about the local campsites. I know you say one's closed, and I have no idea why that would have happened. But people who want to stay on a main road versus people that want to stay in a car park, they either do it at different times because they've got different things that they want to do, or they're just totally different people. So I don't think we're providing a competitive thing to a nice campsite with nice facilities. Should we make a proposal for 2 nights rather than? I think we want to bring in Simon Davey.
Sorry, Chair. All I was going to say, if it's okay, because I can see you're forming a proposal, could I just ask you to go back to Richard? Because it sounds sensible, but it would just be nice just to test with Richard. 2 nights, is there any reason why that's not suitable? I'm sure it is suitable, but this is something I haven't thought of there. Increasing, and I think this is what you're coming to, increasing the charge to at least £20 and for that additional income to be spent on enforcement as far as possible. Is there something there the committee's missing, Richard, or anything you want to add?
No, I mean, the only thing that may be missing is that we've engaged with the CAMPRA, which is the Campaign for Real Airs within the UK, and they've recommended that was part of the sort of the TAF's exploration of the appropriate car parking sites within Exmouth. So they are, you know, they're sort of national campaigners, and they look at the, you know, they're advocating the sort of the creation of the air network that Fred referred to, and that their recommendation was, on the low end, it was between £15 and £20, and it was between 2 and 3 nights. So that is very much in line with what they would be suggesting, and very much in line with what I think happens across Europe as well. So that is, I think, quite commonly accepted within the motorhoming world that would be reasonable, I think. So.
Thank you, Richard, for that. Councillor McKinden, Councillor Bean, and Councillor.
Thank you. I think I would also support limiting it to 2 nights. I think it's probably easier to expand from 2 to 3 than go the other way. And I think I would also support charging more because, you know, there will be costs here and it will help us if we can use that for enforcement and also to justify that we're giving them some resources. So if they fill 1,000 litres of water, well, you know, actually those things are covered by the charges we're making.
I was in the middle of a proposal when Simon interrupted. Am I allowed to finish my proposal off?
I'll just, Councillor, you okay to come back in afterwards? Go on, Paula.
My proposal was to alter the recommendation so that it was for 2 nights only and to put the fee up for £20.
So B, to reduce the maximum permitted consecutive stays to 2 nights with no return within 72 hours, yes?
Yep.
And G, to increase overnight stopover fee to 20?
Yep.
Yeah. And the additional...
And we could add an H, so that there is a yearly review by the appropriate scrutiny committee.
And the additional uplift to hopefully be looked at into enforcement, whether we can actually just go from 6 to 8 in the evening, be looked at. That will be quite useful, I think. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is that another, does that become I? Uplift. Uplift to be applied or ring fence, or as far as ring fence?
Ring fence. Yes.
Ring fence towards additional
Yes.
enforcement provision. Looking at Simon and Richard. Yep.
Yep. I'll bring back...
I always like it when a legal person says ring fence.
Councillor Levine, you wanted to come in?
Taking the words out of my mouth, but I forgot to give, I should have declared an affection or I hate motorhomes. I'm an inveterate camper. And I can tell you, in the days when we used to go camping, campsites were empty during the week. Friday evening, everybody walked in. Sunday, they disappeared back home. So it is 2 nights for the campers of the 1980s and 1990s. So I think 2 nights are quite enough.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Collins.
Thank you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some of these motorhomes, they've got a hitch on the back and they pull a car. Well, surely they don't need to park in near the seafront. They can park on the outskirts of Exmouth and drive their little car in and park. And quite a few have bicycles on the back. They can cycle in. There's no need for a lot of these vehicles to be parked in Exmouth. How many, I'd like to ask, how many private camping sites are there, caravan sites where motorhomes can go to in Exmouth or around Exmouth?
There's 2, I think. Councillor Cahill?
Yeah, you've got St John's Farm up St John's Road. It's been there a long, long time.
Thank you very much for that.
How many caravan club sites are there? I've got one near me, and
I think we've actually
motorhomes
done questions.
do go there. And my niece, she farms half a mile away from me, and she has a site, and she's got shepherd huts there. And quite a few of the people that come and stay in these shepherd huts are people with motorhomes.
I would say it's all the in thing, but I think we've gone through questions. We've had the debate, and I think we're ready to move the recommendation to a vote. Tim? Councillor Dumper?
Yes, I haven't actually made my contribution to this debate yet. which is that I sit halfway between the Roy Collins, Peter Faithful area of no motorhomes and the Jeff Young situation of let them come. I think there's got, yes, yeah, that was the implication of what you said earlier. And I think there are, particularly as we see so many areas around us that are somehow or another restricting them, we can't say, well, let them come to Exmouth and flood us out. That shouldn't be allowed to happen, really. So that's my overall situation. And within that, we've not actually raised the issue, particularly of the echelon car parking along the seafront, which I personally think is unsuitable for camper vans, really. They are not big enough in size. The other thing I'd like to say, and I didn't ask this as a question, but it's obvious if more and more are coming, then we've already discussed in the terms of cars that we have to make bigger spaces. But if, say, we have them on the echelon and then they're driving round to Mayor Road Car Park to use the facilities, then any place they park needs to be of the correct size. Otherwise, enforcement officers may come along and say, well, you're oversized, you can't go there. So there is going to be an issue about the marking of car parks to make them where we're going to allow them to ensure that we do that. Now, I realise that the situation at the moment is that we are doing a restricted scheme, and I, like others here, fully support that. I'd like to ask something about the £15. I'd be interested to hear Simon's view on that, with the move towards £20 around the table, because I'm not absolutely convinced that we need to go quite that high. So your opinion would be valuable on that one, and Richard's, of course. Thank you. I think that's all right.
Thank you, Tim. Over to you, Simon, then.
I don't think of anything to add with the debate, and Richard has summed up sort of I forget the name of the group, but in terms of, I think where the committee was going was in line with that. We might have different views in that obviously £20 to me, I'm your section 151, go as high as you can.
Thank you, Simon. I would say I was just looking at the point of view they're getting basically very little on the car parking side. They're being charged very little for a large space. Yeah. So that's where I was coming from on that front. So I think 20 is, I think we are agreed that 20 is what we're going for on the recommendation. So I think, seconder, Councillor Matt Hall, you proposed, yes. So I think we'll go to the vote. We are all clear what we're voting on. You've got the recommendations in front of you and the 3 amendments. We've got increase of overnight stopover fee to £20 on point G, reduce the maximum permitted consecutive stays to 2 nights with no return within 72 hours, and is it IH?
So D was the second one you just read out, reducing the overnight stays to 2. H, yearly review by the relevant scrutiny committee, and I, uplift, we might need to work on what the uplift is, uplift in charging to be ring-fenced to increase enforcement activity.
I think we're looking at the £5 increase from the 15, which was originally in the recommendations.
Okay, so probably for the minutes.
We can add that, the hours between 6 and 10, or 6 in the evening. Yeah, how does that fit in?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, I understand the rationale behind that. I think the main issue that we've had with enforcement is people staying too long, which is something that we can now control through the Ringo trial, hopefully. In terms of, I don't necessarily have concerns about people not receiving PCNs. I think it will create a few operational difficulties that we can look to overcome, but just around a lot of the stuff that the guys have to do is very early on, such as opening gates and such. So it's quite easy to enforce it earlier as it is to enforce later as well. So I mean, the benefits of enforcing it early on in the morning is that the rest of the car parks and machines can then be readied for the day, where at the end of the day, once all the charging sessions are finished, we're only really focusing on that area. So I understand the rationale for it, and it is possible. But yeah, it wouldn't amount to a dedicated resource by any means. So we'd be looking at maybe a few additional overtime shifts for the operational team. So if that's what it's designed to achieve, then that would be fine, and we can probably do that anyway. So that's not an issue. But yeah, there is sort of a reason behind us doing it early on, and that's where most of our tickets are issued to motorhome. So if you haven't paid overnight, you're going to get a ticket nice and early on. So we're looking at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we do cover off people not paying. That's not the main issue that we've had, is people staying too long. So that's the main enforcement issue that we've been trying to resolve. So, and I suppose the biggest issue that we have in the evening would be the sort of the music, people sitting outside, and then that would be addressed by the use of the antisocial behaviour officers to tackle that. Because part of the I suppose the issues that you have outside of the normal working hours are having to go double crewed as well. So we'd be looking at having 2 members of staff to do that, which then impacts on our sort of normal operating throughout the week. So it's just a consideration there. So we can't get a dedicated resource in because it wouldn't amount to that. So for the type of issues that we're looking to resolve around the antisocial behaviour, that they would be best placed to be able to deliver that work on our behalf. So, you know, the money can still be ring-fenced for maybe securing them in the future, because I know they're on sort of 12 months rolling contracts. Matt will probably be able to advise a bit further on that, but if that funding could then be to sort of prolong that in the future, then that would work well, I think, as a balance.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Nuttall?
I just see this ring fence money being used by Richard and the team in the most appropriate way. I think it's important to have that financial flexibility to be able to do that. I don't think it's for us to say that it needs X, Y, and Z done. I'm sure that Richard and the team can use the money appropriately and wisely to help address any issues or known worst days of the week, that type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've got the wording for that, Nita.
So if we change, so if I reads the uplift, so the additional £5 uplift, ring fence to increase enforcement activity to be used in the most appropriate way. Yeah, it felt to be in the most appropriate way. Just to add, from a Dorset perspective, they do early. They do. They knock people up early in the morning, but they do early.
Thank you. Tim, quick one before we go to the vote.
Well, I wanted to, I mentioned the echelon, my view on the echelon spaces. It's clear to me that will be included in the scheme anyway. So what I would like to ask is that we add words to the Matt's review to mention especially the echelon car park spaces, because I think they are important and they should be mentioned.
I think it's a review overall. Am I right in saying?
What I was suggesting, Madam Chair, is just the fact that the decision tonight needs to be reviewed. So in essence, that would cover both areas. I would have said without having to need to be specific.
Thank you. Before we go to the vote, Mike, please, your microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Recommendation E there does talk about including markings and signage. So I think in some ways we've already got that covered. I'm assuming the signs are going to tell people you can't pass parked vehicles of more than this size in Echelon, and now that we've got marked spaces, the enforcement people have now got a reason to come and knock on your van and say, you know, you're not consistent with this. Thank you.
It's manoeuvring as well as the size.
I think we're going to go to the vote because it is in there. So all in favour of all the recommendations? Thank you. Against? One against? And no abstentions? Thank you. That was duly carried. Thank you. Thank you for the good debate. Moving on, and thank you, Councillor Cahill, for your insight. Moving on to Agenda 8, the review of the petition scheme, pages 46 to 56. I will call on Andrew Melhuish, Democratic Services Officer, to present this report. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So at the, I think it was at the meeting in March, agreed to bring back a scheme which would enable the council to operate an e-petition, an online petition scheme. That is the scheme that you have presented to you tonight. The scheme has been in place for some time as just a scheme to allow paper-based, and you'll see there's a new section set out with half a dozen points which then allow the authority to be in a position to accept e-petitions. Throughout the rest of the document, there are very minor changes where there have been email addresses changed to the current ones, and where language in the report isn't correct, it's also been updated to reflect the use of the language that's set out in the Constitution. So not a great deal of change in the scheme itself. The scheme has been to the Constitution Working Group, and I'm not quite sure how you as a committee want to play this evening, but really it's a case that any of your comments that you may have, particularly on the e-petition element of the scheme, are then resubmitted back to the Constitution Working Group. So they will then ultimately sort of sign off and then make recommendations on this part of the Constitution and other elements of the Constitution that they are working on. So I'm happy to take any questions on that. I think to preempt a question you're also going to ask me, I think, this evening, is where are we with the e-petition scheme? It's been slightly delayed through mostly sort of resource issues between ourselves and Strata. We're now in a position where we've now understood because in the report, you remember in March, we talked about following the Exeter example. We've thought that that was a standalone system that had been designed by Strata. After extensive investigations, we've discovered that's not the case. They are using Issue Manager, which is in turn the ModGov app that you as councillors receive. So there is actually a module there. So what we need to do now, and earlier today I sent an email to Strata, is engage with the account manager at Civica to say, please can we have this switched on? And then the petition scheme will be up and running. What I don't have tonight is a timeline to that. I can provide that timeline hopefully next week when I have that to you in an email as by way of update. So that's where we are with the e-petition scheme, but obviously we need the particular code to back that up. So happy to take any questions this evening.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I was disappointed to not see it up and running by the end of May, because that was your suggestion. And I would like to see a sort of deadline of the first week in August, because we need it up and running, because it was even reported in the Exmouth Journal. So we need it as soon as possible, because people are trying to access it and we haven't got it. Have we got any questions out of the outside committee? Any questions? Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Am I correct in saying that, as I understand it, you won't accept what I call hard copy petitions? If you could answer that question first, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. No paper-based petitions can still be submitted to the council. Once an e-petition scheme is up and operational, paper petitions can still be presented to this council. This e-petition is an additional offering, if you like, to members of the public who may prefer to use the internet for submitting petitions to the council. So paper petitions can still be continued to be submitted.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think moving into committee, Councillor Levine and then Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. At the last scrutiny committee meeting, we heard from the monitoring officer that the public now loves to complain. They come up with endless complaints about things simply because we have given them the tools of being able to do so. So my question is about the e-petitions. Are we going to be, do you think we're going to be swarmed simply because people can apply for petitions? The door is open. Can we cope? What sort of, can we cope with the flood of petitions as they appear to be, about housing and all sorts of other things in the council? And my second problem is, it is a problem. I'm not very happy about section 2.1 about what can petitions cover. Because it says, matters which affect local people or local communities in East Devon more than the general public nationally. And I look at Councillor Young over there and I think, wow, supposing I'm going to start a petition about pollution in Exmouth. I know it's Southwest Water problem, but Southwest Water covers the whole of the Southwest. There are problems nationally about discharge of waste. So it is an East Devon problem, but it's also a national problem. So it is the greater than the national problem thing. Couldn't we simply say it has to be something which affects the residents in the area of the council? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Levine. It's one of the things I struggled with. Say, Andrew?
Okay, I'll take your last point firstly, and then I'll hopefully have a little bit of time to work out an answer to your first question. So in terms of section 2, yes, and I think as well comments around that were made at the meeting in March when you considered around e-petitions. What you didn't have perhaps at the time was the scheme. So absolutely, if you would like to suggest that the wording perhaps at the end of East, on the second bullet point, it just ends in East Devon, and then, that I think is perhaps giving a bit more clarity as well. Certainly before I came this evening, I sort of was revisiting that and thought, actually, yes, so we can take that back. That can be taken back to the Constitution Working Group. In my experience where I've worked at authorities with a petition scheme, an e-petition scheme, no, it hasn't led to a considerable increase in the number or the level of petitions that have been submitted. I think what I would say I have seen at previous authorities I've worked at, there have been a number of petitions, and when I say a number of petitions, maybe sort of between 15 and 20 a year, but they've never been sort of the petitions that have received a high level of responses to, so they have only ever then resulted in perhaps having an officer response or being referred elsewhere. So I've not seen that, but I mean, it could be a position in other authorities, as you say, picking up on if there's a complaints process, it means people can complain. But I think it's important to have these things in place. The same with offering an e-petition scheme, so that people, if they do want to bring issues to you as councillors to discuss and debate, they can do so using that mechanism.
I think that it is important to be able to do an e-petition, but are we ready for the flood? That's really
I think there's a lot of people who like to moan, but whether they'll get down to the nitty-gritty of doing the filling in of the form is another matter, but we wait to see. I'm going to go through the committee members in committee because I have noted Peter Faithful wants to speak, but we're doing in the committee at the moment. I'll come to you later. Councillor Matt Hall, Duncan McKinder and Bethany Collins.
Thank you. Just to follow on from Councillor Levine, I'm just slightly concerned in 2.1 that we need to be careful of the wording so that we as a council don't end up with public expectation that we will sort something that we have absolutely no control over. That concerns me. In 3.2, where we're talking about petitions for council debate and petitions must have at least 1,500 signatures, I'd sort of like to know where that number has come from, because I think, if you live in Exmouth, Honiton, Axminster, and you've got a local issue, your chances of perhaps getting 1,500 signatures is quite high. If you've got a real pressing local issue in one of the villages, Colleton Raleigh, West Hill, etc., your chances of getting 1,500 are really small, and I'm just concerned that we potentially end up putting a part A in democracy and a part B in democracy. If you have to achieve a certain number, I think it should be, I don't know, a percentage of the population or something like that. I think that would be helpful. I do question whether 3.3 is needed, because surely our staff would come to talk in council about council-related stuff anyway, so I'm not quite sure why that's needed. And then I think it's 5.12.1, I think, where we're talking about the monitoring officer being able to decline to accept petitions, etc. I'd like that to have some form of member oversight, even if it's only the relevant portfolio holder. I think for democracy and transparency, it's important to have some level of member input into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. You want to come back on any of that, Andrew?
Yes. Okay. So I think elsewhere in the scheme there will be parts that will refer to what can and cannot be accepted. Certainly some areas around planning matters, quasi-judicial and regulatory would definitely be excluded from petitions. And also when a petition is received, if it isn't something that for which we're responsible as a local authority, we would need to let the petition organiser know that, and then probably let that other authority, be it the county council or another body, know, and they would be able to deal with that, and we would be able to respond to the petition organiser in that regard. I think the trigger of 1,500 and the scheme that's before us is the scheme that East Devon has had in place for some time, should be population based. So they should reflect a percentage based on the population of East Devon. That's normally the way that the petition scheme. I think it may be worth just reviewing that figure, but that's certainly the figure that was there previously and appears to be correct. Officers giving account at a meeting. Again, yeah, if you would like to sort of recommend back to the Constitution Working Group to look at deleting that or the relevance or worth of that. Again, that's just something that's been in the petition scheme since its inception here at East Devon. And I think finally your point around adding someone else into the mechanism, again, is a reasonable suggestion to put back towards the working group. In my role as Democratic Services Manager, I also am advising the Constitution Working Group, working with them very closely. So I've taken so far comments, and any further ones I suppose is worth saying. I can just take those, I can perhaps take those back to the working group. And I know there's councillors here tonight that sit on that, and then for their reconsideration before it then comes back to council.
Thank you. Do you want to follow up?
Yeah, can I just come back on one thing? I think I understood what you were suggesting with regards to the first bit, Andrew. It's just I'm slightly concerned. I don't want us to create a system for petitions where members of the public put in a huge amount of effort to collect the right amount of signatures, etc., for a petition, turn up to Blackdown House for somebody to turn around and say, that's not ours, mate, that's going to have to go to somebody else. I think it's better that we're clearer up front what we deal with, and have the facility that perhaps if somebody has got a question about, because they're not sure which council deals with it, that they can come to us, and there is the facility somehow, whether over the phone or via email, for us to be able to say, actually, no, that's not for us, that's a county matter, here is the contact details. I just think if we do it the other way around, I think that might create a few angst from people who spent potentially a huge amount of time collecting and sorting petitions.
I think I agree. Clear and concise is what you want to give over, rather than giving expectations which we can't fulfil. So yes, you've noted that one anyway, haven't you? Councillor Duncan McKinder.
Thank you, Chair. Specifically on the e-petitions, I mean, obviously it must be the same rules as apply to a regular paper petition. You have to be resident in East Devon to raise one or to respond to one. Does the e-petition software from Civica that you mentioned, does that enforce that? I mean, presumably it's collecting name and address, and presumably it stops people signing multiple times, because obviously a paper petition can be signed multiple times. Somebody presumably does scrutiny on, oh look, I've got the same name here, signed multiple times, either by mistake or deliberately, to weed those out. But since it's so much easier to generate large amounts of clicks online, we don't want our officers to be swamped with policing all that. It would be much better if the software could do at least most of that policing. Is that something it provides? Make that safe?
Yes, I understand that is the case with it. And obviously it has to be a valid email address within East Devon. The petition organiser, when they first set it up, would then be vetted in a very loose sense, really, but made to make sure that they were a resident of East Devon, and they are able to submit a petition in the first place. And then once that petition, we would then acknowledge that petition within 10 working days, and then once that petition goes live, then they would be able to share the link to people who want to support it, and then people can start to fill it in, and then the system will validate the email addresses. There's also a back office process in that, in as much as with that you would also be able to go in as officers, we'd be able to go in and there would be a spreadsheet of everything in there. So again, you could do another scan of that as well, and there would probably be something within, because that would come through as an Excel, there would be something in Excel that would enable you to be a bit more sort of clearer in just checking that there weren't any details that were from outside of the district.
Thank you. So that would stop somebody just inventing lots of names with spam email addresses, because you're not, you would have to check out each signature, or the software would. Otherwise, you'll just get 50,000 of your imaginary friends to sign a petition for you.
Yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is the potential for that to happen, but in my experience, I haven't witnessed it. I think it's more likely in a paper-based one. The paper-based ones tend to perhaps be more difficult, and particularly if you're presented a paper one with sort of 2,000 or 3,000 signatures, then it does become more difficult, and someone then does have to physically go through that page by page. Whereas with an electronic, it's easier to do because it's contained within spreadsheets.
And finally, is there a cost for this extra Civica module? I mean, that seems to if it has all of those features, it's probably quite sophisticated, and I imagine those things don't generally come free, or do we have a license that allows us to use anything out of Civica?
Yeah, we're just waiting to get an update on that. If there is costings, it's going to be very, very limited. We already have a contract with Civica for ModGov and Issue Manager, so I think it's just a case. There are a number of other modules within Issue Manager. They've not been activated, and it's just this one needs to be activated. It probably could have been done some time ago, so I'm hoping that it's going to come in within our existing contract price, but if not, I might be looking towards the end of that table just to see whether we can do that financially. But I don't think the costs will be excessive on that.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Bethany Collins, and then Councillor Roy Collins.
Thank you, Chair. So, just out of my own interest, Andrew, do we know how many sort of roughly petitions we're getting sort of on a yearly basis? And of those, when did a petition last come to council for debate? Do we know that?
Okay, so we received a petition last year relating to the George Inn, and that came to council for debate, and that is the only petition that has been received in line with the council's petition scheme. I believe that that petition was last July, so that, yeah, so in the last year, one petition has been received. No approaches have been made for the submission. And what I would say in respect of that petition that came to council, there were a series of sort of actions, and as a result of that, ongoing activity is happening as a result. So it has had an impact on a building in the area. So only one so far.
Question. I think it was Councillor McKinder who.
Just on what they were talking about in terms of people doing all of the work and then finding out that it might not be something that we can actually sort of support with. I know on the website we do have a page of things that we don't do, so I wonder if we could link to that for people when they're sort of submitting their petition to make sure that they check that first, and then if they miss that, that's sort of on them.
Good idea. I was just saying that it was Councillor McKinder who helped. It was in his area, and it was a positive outcome, I think, on that one. Councillor,
if I could, Chair,
yeah,
just a point of order, or correction, it didn't get debated because it didn't have enough signatures. It just got noted by council, but as you say, there has been some work from the monitoring officer and ongoing discussions between the owners and the group that raised the petition. So it had some impact. Obviously, the petitioners would have wanted a lot more impact.
Obviously. Councillor Roy Collins, then Councillor Tim Dumper, and then I think we're going quickly for an out of committee to Peter Faithful.
Thank you. I do not like petitions at all. I don't put any weight on them. Many years ago, I done a petition, collected signatures against hunting, because I was a member of the League Against Cruel Sports. And people signed that petition that hunted. I took it to market. Farmers signed it, no bother. They didn't realise what they were signing. And I sent the thing off to the League Against Cruel Sports anyway. But on Tuesday, there was a planning application for an Exmouth Boxing Club. And a lady, public speaker, said her mother had been put under duress. Couldn't get rid of the person that wanted to get the signature. And she signed it, although she supported the boxing club and the petition was against it. She signed it because she was under duress. So I don't give any weight to petitions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's your personal opinion. Thank you. Councillor Tim Dumper?
Yeah, I was just going to go back on the thing about people not knowing what individual councils do and that kind of thing, which was in the question from Matt Hall. We've been discussing that now. And I just really wanted to ask Andrew, and obviously you've not had a great deal of experience of petitions coming forward here since you've been here, but have you had any input from other officers, more long-serving officers, of what petitions, what problems have come up with petitions before? I mean, perhaps Simon here has had some experience with it in the past. Any?
I can't recall. I'm looking at Nick.
Yeah, we don't get an enormous amount. Car parks, I think car parking charges was probably the biggest one, and picking up the point about checking and looking for replicated signatures. Yeah. That was really challenging because it was in. I'll not be correct in terms of the number of parts, but it was in lots of different parts, and they all had to be checked against each other manually. But I don't recall, and I might not know all of them, that we've get a significant amount. But I think the electronic system will be helpful in terms of that correlation of signatures that is really time consuming at the moment.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Quick question from Councillor Peter Faithful.
Well, it's not actually a question, it was just a comment in support of Councillor Levine's comment. A bit of be careful what you wish for. You know, you all know that I've got a petition running with the central government. I just wanted to let you know, when I first made inquiries about it, the website was on 5 pages, and that's 50 petitions per page. By the time I'd filled in my form, it increased to 7 pages. By the time my petition, 2 months later, my petition was approved, this was in relation to, I think, a response from, you all know, the petition for a retake of the general election, which got 3 million signatures, and so it promoted the whole subject. It was on around about 15 pages when it was approved. It is now running at about 39 pages.
This is a national
yeah, but it's still
platform, isn't it?
When people realise they can do it, you can suddenly find that the workload suddenly goes racing up because somebody's gone and promoted the subject. So, like I said, be careful what you wish for.
Thank you. I think also they keep sending out links to you to actually sign other petitions as well. So it's self-making. Moving on to debate, or recommendations?
Can I make a proposal if we accept it?
With the slight, going back to the working group,
yes,
which I think you've noted all those. Roy, can you?
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Bean.
Yes, so I'm hearing that with the changes, I've made a note of the changes and the suggestions. What I will then do is take those back to the working group, and Councillor Dumper is obviously a member of the working group as well, so hopefully between us we can, with those notes, we can give some feedback to the group and then update the scheme to make some of those changes, just to make the scheme that little bit more clearer than it exists as it is.
Thank you.
Just a question, if it goes back to the working group, what happens to it after that?
Once the working group have finished with it, then we'll be going to the plan. Then will be with those comments fed in. The next stage is this scheme, and quite a bit more of the constitution will be coming back to council for council to approve.
But am I right that we can actually get the e-petition scheme up and running by the beginning of August, please?
So subject to what comes back from Strata following the request earlier today, I will update you on as soon as I hear something next week, and then I will indicate in that correspondence with you, Chair, what the timeline is on that, because if it's unrealistic, and may have been unrealistic on reflection, if it's unrealistic, I think it's better to say we can do this for, and whatever that may be. But if possible, the answer is yes, because I'm very keen. Again, this is kind of, you know, another job off of the list, if you like, that we're, and also it's that offer to members of the public out there, particularly because we did promote it. And
it's a target date, and if we can make that target date, that would be even better. Thank you. So are we happy to, sorry, Duncan?
Sorry, Chair. And so just to clarify that, although in answer to Councillor Fernley, you said that the comments we've made here would go back to the working group and then to full council, but this e-petition bit wouldn't need to wait for that, because that puts it well into the future, doesn't it?
I think we're looking at two separate entities. Am I right in saying that? I'm hoping we are.
yes, so the scheme is going back to the working group, the Constitution Working Group, to review your comments and to make any changes on that. The scheme, the e-petition scheme itself, or the software package that does the work behind the scenes, is not part of this evening. That already exists from previous recommendations from this committee, and that's around implementing it and making it go live on the website. But we need the scheme in place as well to coincide with that. I think that the Constitution Working Group are due to meet in the next 7 or 8 days. So the intention will be that this document goes in there. And I think even if it's in draft and the scheme is introduced, the electronic scheme is introduced, we can still refer to it. That's it. That's it. It's there.
We don't want to slow it down again, do we? Thank you. So I think, can I move this to a vote through the chair? All in favour? Go through. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 9, animal licensing and enforcement policies, pages 57 to 119. Yes, 5 minutes, comfort break. Thank you.
Last push till the end.
Can we all sit down, please? We're about to start. I think. Yeah. I think we are now live streaming. Welcome back, everyone. Agenda item 9, animal licensing and enforcement policies, pages 57 to 119. I'll bring in Matt Blythe, the Assistant Director of Environmental Health, to present this report. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. So the report in front of you tonight is actually a bit cheeky in really some ways, because it actually introduces 2 separate new policies that we're looking to introduce, and we would like your opinion on. So we're looking at 2 different aspects of related to animal legislation. One is the licensing side, and one is the enforcement side. So hopefully I can take you through those and answer any questions that you have. So as you know, environmental health covers a number of different enforcement activities: food safety, health and safety, environmental protection, various other bits and pieces. And one of the things that we also cover is animal-related legislation. Now, all the enforcement activity undertaken by the Council is covered by an overarching enforcement policy, which we work to. However, within that policy, there is an opportunity that where there is a need or where there is a benefit of doing so, you can bring kind of sub-policies to actually enhance and explain some of the areas in a bit more detail. What we've noticed around animal-related issues, particularly dogs, as you can appreciate, is that there's often quite a contentious, quite a high-profile area of enforcement, and we felt it would be beneficial to maybe add a little bit more meat to those particular bones. So hence why I've introduced, or proposing to introduce, a specific animal enforcement policy, which is shown in Appendix 1. Now, I also need to do a bit of an apology because the draft policies that are present at the moment are not in the correct format. They would be updated. The content will remain the same, but the actual format will change. So just bear that in mind, please. So, as I say, because it's complex and often high profile, felt that a subject-specific enforcement policy would be beneficial to ensure it's consistent, so we have the specific tools and actions available to authorised officers to give them greater context and to aid the understanding of the approach the Council takes towards animal enforcement. And the animal enforcement policy covers all aspects of animal-related enforcement, including dog control through the public space protection orders, stray dogs, dog identification tags, and microchipping of dogs and cats, and social behaviour, which includes control of dogs, animal licensing, and Animal Welfare Act responsibilities. Now, because that has a direct link into the next element, we felt it was appropriate to bring the 2 into the same time. So we're also introducing a new animal licensing policy. So we have these various responsibilities for licensing premises that provide services in relation to animal welfare activities. So things like zoos. We also cover animal breeding establishments, pet shops, that sort of thing, to make sure that the animals' welfare is considered when they're on the premises. And we have certain requirements that relate to ensuring that licence holders are suitably inspected and assessed, that they meet regulation requirements for the grant of a new licence or refused if necessary. We carry out appropriate enforcement action where it's required, and to ensure that licences are not granted to individuals that are already disqualified. And the draft policy is set out in Appendix 2. So there's no requirement to have this policy by law, but again, it's a potentially occasionally contentious area of work. It can cause some difficulties. So by setting out the standards that we expect in terms of what work we deliver, we feel it gives a better appreciation of what the customers can expect, and also if there's anyone who has complaints, can expect too. So very happy to take any questions if that's required.
First of all, I'll go out of committee. Have we got any questions from outside? 2 shakes of the head. No. Moving into committee, Councillor Levine, McKinder, and then Hall.
Sorry, Matt, completely stupid question. When I was young, people went to the post office to buy a dog license. Are we talking about licensing here something similar to that?
Similar in the sense it's a license, but other than that, no, not really. It's, for instance, a zoo license obviously applies to all the animals within the zoo, and we have to administer the license, so it's quite involved. And in fact, we had to go quite a long way to employ our animal licensing officer, because it's a very specialised role, and these days they have to be highly competent. it's an 18-month training course to do that. So yes, whilst the basics are kind of saying it's a license, the actual level of knowledge and understanding is huge, and to be honest, far greater than I have. So yeah, it's a bit more involved.
Thank you. Councillor Mackinder and then Councillor
Thank you,
Hall.
Matthew. I mean, I'm assuming that we've been doing this work ever since the district was created, because some of the laws there were 18 something or other, the Dogs Act. So we've just been doing it without explicit district policies. There's quite a lot of text there. Have we been able to gather most of that from other authorities? Have we had to write it from scratch? Because it would seem that every authority probably needs pretty much the same stuff, because they're all national legislation they're implementing.
I think one of my colleagues used the phrase borrowed with pride, so I can pretty much reassure you that most of it will have been picked up from elsewhere. But again, it's just that having that consistency of approach. Our animal licensing officer takes part in a county-wide group. She brings a wealth of experience from other places she's worked, and these are things that have been in place at other places. So we felt it was appropriate to bring this in.
Okay, thanks. Couple of things. You did mention it was the formatting wasn't complete. So one of my comments was just a minor one on, I think, page 23 of the licensing policy. You have an address there which isn't formatted, whereas one of the previous addresses is, and it just makes them stand out better if they are. I think probably more importantly, on page 26 in section 18.9, you've got when it's talking about young primates too soon, I think the 2 is missing an O. It doesn't make any sense with. So just add an extra O just to make. I'm sorry, I didn't proofread the whole thing, but that jumped out as I read it because it didn't make any sense.
Thank you for those notes. We've got that. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't feel qualified enough to be able to challenge most of the text within this. What I will say is I read this and there was an awful lot of O's and R's as I was reading it, and I just wonder how much of this is widely known amongst the general public, and whether this could be the start of some form of press release, advertising, using Facebook, whatever, to try and get some of this across, because particularly some of the things I read to do with dogs, etc., I'm sure people will know quite a bit of it, but they won't know all of it, and I just think it would be something that we could do to help facilitate better and wider knowledge.
Thank you. Yes, over to you, Matt.
Yeah, quite agree. I think it's an area of work. The regulatory side is always a bit of a Cinderella subject. It sort of sits in the background a lot of the time. This sort of, you get to promote your successes, but generally most of the work, it goes under the radar. So yeah, I think you're quite right, and we do take the opportunity where we can promote these things. We also work with Devon Loves Dogs too, where we can. So we're trying to improve those sort of relationships, and we are trying to get those messages out around the common side of stuff. And again, it's taking the opportunities where they arise, but also we need to be careful too. So for instance, you'll know that there was a recent issue with the bear cubs who got out in the zoo. That's an area that we would then look into from a licensing point of view. So it's getting that balance between make sure the awareness is out there and appropriateness in relation to the issue. But yeah, I quite agree.
Thank you, Matt. I've just got one quick question, just to clarify. So if someone's actually keeping red squirrels in an enclosure, that would be covered by this policy, am I right?
Is that as a pet or as a business?
As a business.
Can I ask if we take that outside to have a look at, if that's an issue, and we're very happy to look into it.
Thank you. Councillor Fernley?
Because I knew so little about this topic, I did put the paper through ChatGPT to see what it would tell me and whether this was a thing that people do. And it seems it is. And it came up with various typos and bits and pieces of information. I'm not going to read this out now, but I'd be happy to share it with Matt if you wanted to have a look at it, what I'd achieved.
Thank you. Paula. Did I see Councillor Roy Collins? Yep.
Thank you. I'd like to know how many zoos and parks for wild animals do we have in East Devon? And also I've got a second question. I'd like to know, some years ago, East Devon Council banned circuses with animal acts. Is that ban still in force? Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you. I knew someone was going to ask me that question. I don't know the answer, so I'll have to find out the answer to you about the number of zoos we have. I think it's a handful, but yeah, we have got a few. But I will come back to you on that one. The other thing about the banning of circuses, now as I understand it, I believe that's the banning on our land. So obviously that's a separate issue to the animal welfare side. So as a council, we decided we don't want that sort of thing on our land. Potentially, you could still have it happen on private land. I don't think we've been in a position to stop that, but potentially we could get involved in the animal welfare side.
Thank you, Matt. Moving into debate. Any debate? Anything to consider? No. Are we happy? Oh, Tim?
I'll move the motion as the recommendations as stated.
We've got a seconder, Councillor Levine. Yep. Righty-ho, so we will go to the vote to actually recommend the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 together, consider the draft policies and make recommendations where appropriate. We've had a couple of bits there. To recommend to Cabinet to formally adopt the draft animal enforcement policy and separately the draft animal licensing policy. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 10, the work programme 2025-26, pages 120 to 122. This item is to receive the overview committee's work programme for 25 to 26 and to consider a proposal form submitted by Councillor Jeff Young concerning beach hut arrangements and charging review of the current agreed policy. I don't know if we want to have Jeff speak on what he's put out. Do you want to speak on it, Jeff?
I saw that. I can't remember actually writing that. It was some time ago, wasn't it?
It was. You asked me for the form and I got it sent out to you.
But at the time, we were having issues. Well, the first issue was we insist to put the beach huts out at a certain time, and year before last there was a storm just when we put them out, and we got blamed for enforcing people to put beach huts out when there was a storm coming. So we reviewed that, and Budley decided one date, and Seaton decided another, maybe because they have different climates in those two towns. I don't know, but that's what happened. But we do need to keep an eye on beach huts and manage them properly, and reviewing them every couple of years would be really beneficial. And to do it after the season, after this season, to see how it went, and see if there's any storms came this year, if there's any issues with them this year, so we can quickly review them and tweak the conditions for next year before it's too late.
Thank you, Councillor Young. We happy to put this on our work programme? I see sense in it. So I think that's all agreed. There was nods all round that this can go on to our work programme to review the beach huts, etc. after this season. So that will be an autumn sort of project for us to look at. do we have, I think we need to actually have a proposer. I'll propose that from the chair. So everyone in favour? Hands up. Yep, thank you. Have we got any other ideas for work programming at all? The actual forward plan from Cabinet? I've picked up on a couple things. The public space protection order consultation, which that policy we've just looked at covers, there was a consultation. I would like that consultation to come to overview for us to review the results and to review whether there are changes to our policy. Is everyone happy with that one? Yeah, there's nods all round. The council depot review is also going on to the forward, or is on the forward plan. Have we got a feeling whether we want to, can we look at that one? Yeah.
I'm looking at Simon because I think it was going to ELT. There's a report that didn't get there, or there was no, I don't know what happened, but there is a report lurking.
Yeah, there is a draft report. It's going to next week's ELT discussion, so it will go through to Cabinet.
So can we bring that to overview once it's gone into from the ELT? Yeah, before it goes to Cabinet?
No, that'll probably be too late. I think there's a time on that one. Sorry. I will check when it goes through ELT and say that it's become a bit casual, sorry. But through the chat. When it gets reviewed at ELT, I'll see whether there is an urgency. If there isn't, I'll ask for the come through.
Thank you. Thank you. And
yeah, there's a budget requirement coming through for it to spend some money, and I think that's fairly urgent. I think that's why it's coming to Cabinet, and a lot of it is confidential at the moment, so we can't say too much of what's going on. But it will become an issue, a bigger issue later on.
At some stage we'll be looking at that one. And I think we've got the public toilet, the next stages coming through, which I'm trying to organise dates for September, and the overview meeting is going to be changing dates, I think, but we haven't got that confirmed, but it will be a September meeting. So I think that is it. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hereby close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.